Hey, what's going on, you guys? So in this video, I wanted to share with you guys what to do when you notice a transition word in the middle of a sentence. So this is a sort of trickier way that the SAT can challenge you with transition questions, but it's not very difficult as long as you know these important tips. So the first thing that I want you guys to notice, right, is this transition word in the middle of a sentence. Now, when I say in the middle of a sentence, I don't mean exactly in the middle of a sentence. I just mean that it's placed within or inside of like a sentence. Okay, so here we have the sentence that says, this shift, and then the transition word, right? We'll just plug in A. So this shift, however, while providing flexibility for workers, has led to concerns about job security and the lack of benefits typically associated with full-time employment. So this is what I mean by a transition word inside or in the middle of a sentence, right? So what do you do with these, right? What information do you look for? Okay. So the first thing that's important to note, you guys, is when a transition word is placed in the middle of a sentence like this, it's the same thing as placing that transition word at the start of the sentence. Okay, so, if I say this shift, however, has led to concerns, it's the same thing as me saying, however, comma, this shift has led to concerns. Okay, so this transition word here, right, is flexible in terms of where it can be placed. Now, normally, when you guys read a sentence with a transition word in it, where do you see the transition? You see it at the beginning of the sentence, right? And that's exactly it, right? So now that you know that, when you see a transition word in the middle of a sentence, you know that your brain can just place it at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, so why is that important? Well, it's important because if you know the transition word is here, so most students know that when the transition word is placed here, they know, right, that they now have to choose a transition word that shows the relationship between this previous sentence, the sentence that starts with characterized, that ends with previously, right? With that sentence, that'll be IC1, independent clause 1, and this next sentence, right? This shift has led to concerns about security. Okay? So now you know that the transition word has to show you a relationship has to accurately show you a relationship between those two sentences, right? So that is the benefit of knowing, right? That these transitions, like knowing where they can be placed, right? So if they appear in the middle of a sentence, just place it at the beginning of the sentence, and that'll tell your brain, okay, brain, right? I know now that I'm trying to understand the relationship between the previous sentence and this one here with the transition. Okay, and at this point, it becomes exactly the same as solving any other transition question, right? And you guys saw in my last video, I taught you guys the process of how to think about transition questions in a systematic way, how to work through transition questions step by step, right? And that system of thinking is doing things one thing at a time, right? So understanding that first independent clause, once we understand that independent clause, then we move on to the second independent clause. Once we understand the second independent clause, then we can think about, right, well, what's the transition? What's the proper relationship between these two sentences, right? We also talked about how, it's important to know how these transition words are used precisely. And that's because one of the ways to answer transition questions correctly or effectively is by knowing what the relationship between these two independent clauses is not. Right? So the relationship does not show like an example. It doesn't show a comparison. It doesn't show a contrast, right? If you know what the relationship is not, you can cross out wrong answer choices, right? Until you get to the answer, right, that does show you that relationship more accurately, okay? So what that looks like here, we'll work through it kind of briefly. Let me just erase this. Okay. Good. Kind of. There we go. It's my neuroticism. So the first independent clause says, characterized by short-term contracts and freelance work, the gig economy has dramatically altered the traditional employment landscape, creating opportunities for people where none existed previously. So before we move on to the second sentence, you guys, let's unpack this. Let's understand this, right? And if you guys are having trouble understanding complex sentences like this, a good tip is to start with the independent clause, right? The independent clause is here, right? The gig economy has altered the traditional employment landscape, right? So what is the sentence about? Well, we know it's about the gig economy, and we know that it's about the impact that it had, right? The impact of the gig economy, and the impact is it a positive one or a negative one? Well, the impact is positive, right? How do we know that it's positive or a good one? We know that because it's created opportunities for people where none existed, right? So we know that it's a positive impact, right? So start with the independent clause to understand what the core idea is, right? Then you can use some of the surrounding phrases and some of the surrounding information to help you to more specifically understand the sentence, right? But don't try to understand everything at once. And you don't have to understand everything in too much detail. You don't have to have a perfect understanding, but just a general accurate understanding is going to be enough. Okay. So now once we've done that, then we can move on to the second sentence. So the second sentence says, this shift has also led to concerns about job security and the lack of benefits typically associated with full-time employment. So what is this sentence about? Right? This sentence is talking about what? Some of the concerns, right? Some of the problems, right? Some of the issues of this impact, right? Of this impact of the gig economy, right? So these concerns, they're not such positive things, right? This is you guys can't see the smiley face and the sad face, huh? We can see the smiley face, you can't see the sad face. There we go. So these issues or concerns are some of the sort of negative things, right, of the impact that this gig economy has had. And the impact or the negative concerns would be something like job security and the lack of benefits, right? So what do we know about these two sentences now, right? So now once we've kind of evaluated each sentence independently of each other, now we can start to consider, well, what's the relationship? Right? So we know that the relationship is, we have like a positive negative relationship, right? The first sentence is giving us something positive about the gig economy. The second is giving us something a little bit negative, right? Or worrisome about the economy, right? The gig economy. So we have this contrast, right? And we know that this contrasting relationship, we don't want to use words like moreover, because moreover is like the opposite, right? Moreover is the opposite of a contrast. Moreover kind of continues the information, right? Same thing with like, for instance, or an example will also continue the relationship, right? By giving you a specific example of something, of the previous point, and in fact, also kind of continues the previous sentence, right? In a way that kind of strengthens or emphasizes what the previous sentence said. So B, C, and D, they're all under the category of continuers, right? These are all kind of continuing transition words. In other words, they kind of continue the discussion of the previous topic. They do so in different ways, but they all kind of continue it, right? Along the same lines. Whereas a contrast, right, kind of goes in a different direction, like an opposite sort of direction, right? So if we mention something positive, the contrasting word like however now shifts it to the negative, right? And we can see that very clearly. Why? Or how can we see this clearly? Well, we can see this clearly because we've worked on things one thing at a time, right? One step at a time. Because look, I'm telling you guys, the biggest reason that students make mistakes on this test is because you guys are rushing. I've worked with over 7,000 students, and I know this to be a fact at this point. Rushing leads to mistakes. Trying to do too many things at once leads to mistakes, right? Not thinking systematically leads to mistakes, and so one thing that I emphasize or stress extremely heavily in all of my classes is you have to have a system of thinking, right? Knowing what the question is, right, will give you guys it'll help you guys to run that program. I kind of think about it as like a program, a mental program, because because I know for me, I have different programs that I run based off of the question type that I know I'm being asked, right? So if I'm being asked a verb question, I have a program that runs, a system of thinking that runs in my head. If I'm being tested on transition questions, well, it's the same thing, right? Well, that's what these videos are trying to do, right? There, I could talk about one concept for hours, and I've done this in some of my classes, and it's not the most efficient way to teach, because I give you guys like too much information all at once, and I don't want to do that, right? So these videos and the power of the internet, the power of YouTube, is I can kind of simplify the concepts that I'm teaching. I can focus on one concept at a time, right? So the title will kind of tell you what that concept is, and I can focus on that concept within this video. Right now, there might be other concepts or other things that I want to talk about with transition questions, and there are, right? But that's what future videos will be for. Okay, so that's how we're gonna learn. Is in this way. I'll show you guys. I'll teach you guys one important sort of tip, one important maybe sort of foundational knowledge piece, one important strategy, right? Just something that's important that could help some of you guys get a little bit better on this test. Okay. Now, if you just keep watching these videos and keep studying on your own, right? Keep engaging with the community, right? Writing comments to me in the comment boxes below. You'll start to kind of have a better understanding, right, of the SAT. Okay. Now, normally charge thousands and thousands of dollars, right, for an SAT session, but I'm trying to give this stuff to you guys for free. I think part of it is, I just really want to make more of an impact instead of, because I worked at the most expensive sort of private academy in South Korea, and I was able to have an impact, but it was extremely small. It would prevent 99.99% of the population from being able to join or learn in that setting because they can't afford it, right? So instead of working with just a small group of people, right, I want to work with millions of you guys, right, from all over the world, and really see if we can make an impact in this way. I can't do it all myself. I need your guys' help, which is why I want you guys to subscribe and like this channel. Subscribe to this channel, like the video. What it does is that it helps to spread the message. It helps to spread this video to other people like you who are looking for answers to these difficult questions that they might have. They can't afford to find the answers to, or they're just really having a lot of frustrations and struggles with, right, for the SAT. It'll really help them out. Now, how is that going to help you out? Well, that's going to help you out because when I see more traction, when I see an increase in subscribers, when I see more engagement, when I see more thumbs up, what do you think that does to me? It makes me feel a lot more inspired, right, to help you guys out, right? The more inspired that I feel to help you guys out, the better quality these videos will become. The better quality these videos become, the more you guys will be able to learn. The more you guys learn, the more you guys want to share with other people, right? And it'll create this virtuous cycle, right, where we're just benefiting off of each other. It's not a win-lose situation. It's going to be a win-win for everybody, and this is how we're going to create it. Okay, so I need your help in that way. Also, I need you guys to write in the comment box two things. One thing is just share one thing meaningful that you learned. One thing that was helpful, right, from this lesson that you learned. It'll not only help me understand what's beneficial for you, it'll also help you, right, to remember this stuff better. Okay. And then secondly, it's going to be, tell me something you want to learn, right? Something that you're curious about or something that you're having trouble with, right, on the SAT English portion. And then I read all of the comments and I create videos based off of the comments that you guys leave. So that'll do it for this one, you guys. Until next time, Remember, you guys, to always stay curious and always keep learning. All right, you guys got this. Take care.